Right on, King Jesus, no man can hinder me.
The beauty of the music reminds us of the majesty that must have filled the air on the Mount of Olives on that day that Jesus made his triumphal entry into Jerusalem. It's a day we call Palm Sunday. Good morning and welcome to First Edition, the online ministry of First Community Church. My name is Glenn Miles. I'm the senior minister here in this congregation, and we are thrilled that you've joined us on this day. We want you to know that no matter who you are, where you're from, what you believe, or even what you don't believe, you are welcomed and accepted as you are here. Right now, you see a QR code up on the screen. We'd love for you to capture that code, click on the link that appears, and then let us know your attendance on this day. Send us a prayer concern if you have one. You can even share in the offering if you choose to do so. We would love to hear from you. As you can imagine already, this is the celebration of Palm Sunday. This is that day when Jesus enters into Jerusalem, but something fascinating happens after all the excitement, the shouts of Hosanna, the majesty filling the air on Mount of Olives. The city's in turmoil. The Greek word there is seismos. It's being shaken up. Something's going on. There's a shadow. It's the shadow of a cross. So indeed, this is a day of conflicting images of both joy and worry. It helps us prepare, though, ultimately for the celebration of Easter. Let's go now together to worship. During the first 13 years of my ministry, I served a couple of different churches as an associate minister. My primary responsibilities were for spiritual formation, what we called back then Christian education. It was for 2-year-olds all the way through 102-year-olds. I worked with the preschool kids, the elementary school kids, middle schoolers, high schoolers, young adults, middle-aged adults, and older adults, all the way, really, almost from birth to death, as it were. But I was primarily known as the youth guy. I would even point out and say, but I work with older adults, and we have monthly gatherings, and young adults as well. Anyway, yeah, you're the youth guy. I could see why they came to that conclusion. I did spend a lot of time with the youth ministry, and one of my assignments for Palm Sunday was to be sure that we had all the children that wanted to be in the Palm Sunday processional from 2 or 3 years old all the way up to 18, if we could talk some teenagers into doing it as well, to participate at the 11 o'clock service, following the chancel choir and the clergy who would come in before them, waving their palms. So I had 2 goals as an associate minister then for Palm Sunday. Number 1 was to get as many kids as possible to line up to just make it feel big and powerful and fun and celebratory to see all these little ones and all these somewhat older ones following the choir on the way into the sanctuary. And my second goal was for no one sitting along the aisle to lose an eye. In 13 years, we did not lose a single eye. I figured I put that on my resume. I was pretty proud of that. Well, part of that, too, meant I really didn't get into the Palm Sunday celebration. I was so busy worried about getting the kids lined up and getting them in their places and getting them in and then running down around the side of the sanctuary to get up on the chancel to get ready for the next part that I was leading in worship, that I didn't have that same sense of grandeur and excitement and joy that John demonstrated earlier when we were all waving our palms. Isn't it nice that you could come to church and get your morning workout in? That's kind of a nice thing. But then I became a senior pastor at Sandy Springs Christian Church in Atlanta, Georgia. When we moved there from San Diego, we had a little boy named Nate. He was 4 at the time, about 4 and a half. And Julie was pregnant with our second child, Stephen. Well, as the senior leader in this church, their tradition was the senior minister got to lead the parade, which, may I confess, I kind of liked being at the front of the parade. And behind the pastor and the other clergy was the chancel choir and then the kids. But I was no longer responsible for getting the kids lined up. That was the youth guy's job. And he worked to make sure we had all those young people lined up. And I really enjoyed participating that way. I felt the power and the beauty and the grandeur of Right On King Jesus and all the great music that came with that day. I really felt inspired. Until my 4th year, when I looked up after I arrived on the chancel, the music was still going, the hymn was still being sung, the organ was just blowing the roof off the place. It was exciting and all that you would expect. But then I saw my little 3.5-year-old boy, Stephen, proudly walking down the aisle, just swinging that palm back and forth. We could tell he was going to be a theater major just by the way he was playing that role. I also was praying that no one would lose an eye on that day as well. My first reaction, I had 2 of them. My first one was, wow, this is so cool. One of my kids is in the worship service, participating, enjoying it, loving it. We had the cherub choir sing this morning at the 9 a.m. service. You could just feel the grandparents and the moms and dads swelling with pride as their little ones, their little itty bitty ones up on the stage were singing for folks gathered at that early service. That's how I felt on that day. There's my boy. Look at him having fun in church. And then my second thought, I wanted to run down there and grab him, pick him up, carry him out of the parade. All I could think of was, does he know the story? Does he know what's next? Does he know that Jesus is walking into a frightening and dangerous place? That his life is going to be taken, that he's going to be in an upper room with the disciples and his best friends are going to abandon him and deny him and betray him. I don't want him to know. That's too much. I wanted to pick my little boy up and take him out of the parade and just hold him tightly and not let him hear the story that was to come. I could see in that moment, somewhere looming in the distance, beyond the parade, the shadow of the cross. Oh, not literally, of course. On the day of Palm Sunday, there's no cross that's been erected. In fact, the cross probably wasn't put together until Good Friday morning. So 2 low-level soldiers were probably ordered by their captain, their centurion, or somebody to go find some scrap lumber and nail them together to create a cross. There was no pomp and circumstance around that. Get a couple pieces of wood. We've got some prisoners coming in that we're going to nail upon them. But still, I could see that cross. If you're a parent or a grandparent, if you love anyone, you're an aunt or an uncle, you have siblings that you love, maybe a dear friend, when you see them in a situation that might cause them harm, whether it's physical or emotional or spiritual, what do you want to do? You want to rescue them, pull them out, keep them safe. It's John Buchanan, the great preacher who served for so many years at Fourth Presbyterian in Chicago, Illinois. He also was in a church here in Columbus. He said in a Palm Sunday sermon years ago that he thinks it's the most theologically important day of the church year. He says that it's filled with ambiguity, uncertainty, irony. Who knows exactly what's next for Jesus, he wonders out loud. Oh, the crowd is shouting, Hosanna, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. It's a beautiful day, it's wonderful, and yet maybe you could hear it in between the lines as it was read this morning. There's some ambiguity. The whole place, Jerusalem, was in turmoil. It feels like something's off, something's wrong. I mean, after all, on the other side of town, most likely, the governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate, is riding on a stallion. He's riding on a war horse. He's in front of a group of soldiers. There must be thousands and thousands behind him. There's spears and swords and shields glistening in the early spring sunlight. It's a show of power. It's a show of force. That's the way a real leader comes into town. Jesus, he's on a donkey. We can be crude for a moment. He's riding on the back of an ass. All glory, laud, and honor. We sang back in those days in Atlanta, to Christ Redeemer King. Rides on a donkey. On the back of an ass. It's another preacher named Peter Gomes. He was a professor of ethics at Harvard for a number of years, was the chaplain for Harvard as well. Professor Gomes says that he grew up in a church that practiced a parade theology. You just go from the parade of Palm Sunday, skip over Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday, get away from all that scary, dark stuff with executions and the rest, and just move on to Easter Sunday with chocolate bunnies and mimosas and omelets for brunch. That's the way it ought to go, he said, at least in the church that he grew up in. That's how that was. Maybe a few people will come for Maundy, Thursday. There might be a dozen or two for Good Friday. But let's really focus on Palm Sunday to Easter. Skip over all that other stuff. Just have the joy of the celebration. But Professor Gomes knows, you know, we know, you can't hear the stories and not recognize that there's more than just a parade. There's more than the celebration. There's more than the palms waving in the wind. Matthew is very clear in his gospel that Jesus is determined to go to Jerusalem. Luke, in his gospel, says that Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem. He knows his life will be in danger. He knows things will be difficult. He warns his disciples, this is not an easy road to follow. If you're willing to go with me all the way, you better be prepared to give your life fully. He lets them know this, and they don't seem to understand or recognize or see what's happening, but Jesus knows somehow. He knows. And so he makes his way to Jerusalem. And we find him there on the Mount of Olives, the palms waving, the cloaks being thrown down on the ground before him, making his way down that mountain, through the Kidron Valley, up into the ancient city of Jerusalem, where the political and religious leaders are conspiring against him. The first thing he does after the reading we just heard is he goes into the temple and he turns the tables over. It's a way of saying, both literally and figuratively, there's a new way of being in this world, and it's not going to be about power and control and money. It's going to be something completely different. Are you ready for what I'm bringing? He seems to be saying in that moment. And then there's some controversial teachings that causes him to get in some more trouble. And then we get to Maundy, Thursday, in that upper room, where he serves his friends bread, wine. None of the gospel writers say that there are tears in Jesus' eyes, but I've been reading through the lines this week, and I can see him quietly weeping as he says, "Take and eat. This is given for you. And then there's the betrayal, denial. Jesus, before that in the garden, has cried out to God, God, if there's any other way, can you feel the uncertainty? Can you feel the unknown? If there's any other way, God, show me that way. Please help me, Lord, find my way through this. There's got to be, if some other way, please, please. And then Good Friday. You know, there's a strain of thought right now in the United States, in the Christian church. I'm talking about in the church universal throughout our country. There's a strain of thought that says Christians need to be in power and in control and in charge. We need to follow King Jesus, and people need to know that we're going to tell them how to live and how to be and how to behave, because we're tired of being pushed to the side. We want to be at the center of power in everything. I can understand the temptation. There's nothing in Matthew, Mark, or Luke, or John, or the writings of Paul that would suggest that's a way for the church to behave. Instead, we're invited to follow this one. Not because we have swords and shields, not because we rely on the strength of the chariots and the horses and the rest that we might bring, but because he invites us to follow. Matthew seems to be asking that question. Are you willing to follow this one? Are you willing to go all the way with this one who comes in weakness, in humility? This one who will give his life in the name of faith, hope, and love. This is a God that invites us to walk forward, trusting and believing that no matter what happens in our lives, that same God will engage with us. Even if we wander far away, that God will run to us, sprint after us if necessary, to let us know that this God loves us. Are you willing? Are we willing to follow with that God who promises to enter even into our dying? Several years ago, there was a friend of mine who was dying. He was under hospice care. I went to see him a few times while he was there. The conversations were marvelous and meaningful. He talked about love and life and how much he cares for his family and his children. And he spoke about some of his regrets and some of his sorrows and sadnesses that he'd experienced. But on this day that I'm remembering, his wife called me to say, he's fading fast. Would you please see him one more time? So I met her at the chapel, at the hospice. We went together into that space. I said a prayer for her husband, and I said a prayer for her, asking God to give her strength and courage in this moment. Then we left the chapel, walked down the hallway. It was a beautiful day like this, a beautiful spring day, early spring day, temperature in the 60s, blue sky, some puffy white clouds here and there. But as we walked into the room, the shades were pulled all the way down. It was dark, dimly lit. He was laying on the bed there, a blanket pulled up over his shoulder, laying on his right side. His breathing was shallow. His eyes were closed. I pulled a chair up near where his face was. His wife came in behind me and she laid down on the bed. She extended her arm around his shoulders so that she could hold him. And then she put the side of her face on his other shoulder. And I heard her in a whisper say to him, "Hi, sweetie. It's a beautiful day. I love you." It may be the closest I've ever been to the presence of God. She had moved faithfully, hopefully, courageously into that space and entered with him into his dying. That's the promise of God. That's the promise given to us. Oh, we might want a God who is like a great magician in the sky who just waves his wand magically over all of us and everything is better and all things are fine and we don't have any more stresses or any complaints or any fears or worries. Trust me, I'll confess and say I've prayed for a God like that, but that's not the God we get. Instead, we have a God who enters into our lives, inviting us to follow, even into our dying. Several years ago, I led an event for about 900 or so folks who were invited to participate in this series of lectures by Sister Joan Chittister. Maybe some of you have read her work. She's as brilliant as she is humble. I remember one of the keynotes where she said to us, imagine Jesus coming down the Mount of Olives, through the Kidron Valley, up into the ancient city of Jerusalem. Imagine how much courage it took to make that journey. Oh, certainly all of his followers are shouting and waving palms. There's others who are gathering to see what's going on. Imagine all of that is taking place. But consider, she said to us, consider the word that Matthew uses at the end of the reading we heard today. Same one then in that lecture. The word is the whole city was in turmoil. In the Greek, it's the word seismos. Translated, it can mean also commotion or shaken or earthquake. You can hear the root of our English word seismic in that Greek word seismos. The whole city is shaken up like an earthquake with the arrival of Jesus. What does this mean? What's going to happen next? And Jesus can see through all of it. He knows. How he knows, I don't know, but somehow he knows how much danger there is. And she wonders out loud, how much courage did it take for Jesus to make that journey? And how much courage does it take for us to follow him in faith, in hope, and love? You know, this is a great day at First Community Church. Not just because of the palms and the beautiful music that the chancel choir has presented to us. Not just because of your presence, but also because of the fact that it's a new member Sunday. We have over 20 people who are joining our church, who've joined today throughout the 9, 10, and 11 a.m. services. Over 20 at the end of the day, some joining online, some in absentia. That's a really cool number for one day. And in fact, here we are at the end of the third month of this year. We've had 46 new members join our church. That's a huge number in just 3 months. I think that means that 46 have joined in a quarter of the year. Multiply that by 4. I went to seminary. They didn't require math. But I think it's a pretty big number. And in fact, if it's the number I came up with when I played on my calculator this morning, this could be our largest new member year in 25 years, maybe even ever. That's a really cool thing. Thank you very much. And all these folks who joined today, all of us who are members and friends of this church, who are official members, who have our names beautifully written on a church certificate, saying that you're a member formally here in this congregation. That's a beautiful thing. But our membership in the universal church of Jesus Christ will be confirmed. It will be confirmed when we learn to follow with Jesus, to go with Jesus in the name of love, in the name of hope, in the name of faith. Do we have the courage to follow? Are we willing to go all the way? After all, this love that God gives to us is a love so amazing, so divine. It demands our soul, our life, our love. May it be so. The beauty and power of that final anthem, of a love so amazing, really sets the tone as we prepare our hearts and minds for Good Friday, but ultimately for the celebration of the resurrection on Easter Sunday. I look forward to seeing you on that day. Right now, there's a QR code in front of you. We'd love for you to click on that link after you capture it, and then you can register your attendance, share prayer concern. We'd love to be in prayer with you. And also, you can give to the offering if you choose to do so. As you can imagine, it takes quite a bit of funding in order for us to share the good news of Christ's love, not just in Columbus, but around the world. We'd love for you to partner with us in that ministry of sharing Christ's love. In the meantime, have a blessed and beautiful week.